new business. And we have budget presentation from Monty Tech. If you guys want to bring your chairs on up, that'd be great. Only because the mics here pick up better.
This is so exciting.
All right. Nice.
There will be a quiz afterwards.
Thank you. Oh my goodness. Thank you. This is just.
I got stuff everywhere.
I know, I'm sorry, I do too.
No, I'm just got a hot mess right now.
These guys are behind the times. They still use STM.
To be honest. We
I
lost our
learned
steam on the
that
way
last
Force of habit, I think.
They got a heck of a printing department, I know that.
I did it myself. So,
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we all set? Or?
Yeah, take us right through.
All right, bye folks. My name is Tom Brown, first year superintendent at Monty Tech. I'm thinking maybe I should apologize because as I became superintendent, one of my goals was to make sure that I went out and met with all town administrators and everybody else. And the first one I met with was Jessica, and I guess maybe I didn't have a good effect. But, no, I had a great first meeting with Jessica and everything else. Obviously, the focus is going to be on the budget, so I'll give you turn over to very quickly. But I'm going to quickly go through. I'm not going to go through every page of this packet. But one of the things we just want to show is some of the things that's going on at Monty Tech. But in particular, we really like to make sure that the towns and communities understand we do a lot of work trying to make sure that we're not relying just on Chapter 70 money. So this is just kind of a little packet that's going to kind of show that. So we'll just kind of go through some of these things very quickly. But one of the things we did at the end of last summer, beginning of last fall, a large corporation reached out to us saying, listen, we've never done an educational foundation, but we'd like to start something. We see that you have something. We have a Monty Tech Foundation. They asked, listen, could you kind of show us how you go about working with companies? What are the companies supposed to do? Kind of thing. And we were having those conversations, and they said, well, what does an application actually look like? So we kind of showed what an application would look like, and they said, use a fake one, something that you guys do and would do, and we sent it. And next thing we knew, they called us back and they said, well, this is great, we're ready to start as a foundation, and we're going to take your fake application and turn a real application, and they gave us the $370,000 donation. That allowed us to get a couple planers and some saws for our house carpentry program, and the rest of the money we're hoping to use to replace our almost 50-year-old auto body spray booth. So again, great resource there. We really go for grants. With this example here, this Mass Life Science Center STEM grant, we did is we partnered with Fitchburg State University right down the road with our anatomy and physiology course. It turned into essentially a dual enrollment course, so the kids can take the course with us. They receive the credits to go to Fitchburg State, saves them about $1,900 in tuition, but it also gave us some funds to buy some equipment, and the little device kind of there in the bottom right corner is called an animatage table. And what that does is literally some generous person donated their body to this project, and this is a virtual cadaver, and you can work from the skin all the way down through the muscles, through the blood vessels, to the bone and everything. It is the coolest thing in the world. It is life size. It's a great thing. We had one in our health occupations program. This allowed us to give it to our science program. It's just a great tool and everything else. The grant was fantastic. In general, this kind of shows you where we are just for this 1 year alone. We've already earned $3.8 million in grants. Now, some of that obviously is the basic federal grants and everything else, but clearly some of these grants that we worked through, the most recent one we got was the STOP grant that's allowing us to do a safety audit for our entire building. And we have one out right now for $500,000 for a skills capital grant. Our goal is to supplement our culinary program by going out and hooking on to the most popular thing in food these days. We're looking to buy a food truck. And our kids would work a full food truck. We'd allow that to go out to the different festivals in all our towns, so they could see Monty Tech, see our kids at work and everything else. A couple other examples of Skills Capital Grant. Again, I'll try to go this quickly. Bottom left, our dental program received a new grant that allows to get them all new dental chairs, new equipment. All that cabinetry is all done by our staff and our students. So again, that saves money there. In the bottom right, you have our brand new tool crib for our technology program. Great work, again, same folks that help put that together. But really, that really helps our students with measurement. As we break everything down, label everything, it's a great effort that we have there.
You don't lose the tools that way, too.
No, never. Well, okay, almost never.
Sometimes they
On
want.
occasion.
Yeah.
So, this was a great example. When I met with Jessica, I talked about it, I said, listen, I want to make sure, because when I went to the first, I got the position in April last year, so I started going to some of the towns. I started seeing all these pictures from towns saying, this is work we need to do, and how are we gonna do it? And I kept on saying, we could do that, we could do that. So when I met with Jessica, I said, listen, there's projects we'd love to do, what can we do for you? And she mentioned that the fire department here was looking to get some insulation put in. I think 3 weeks later, we had the work planned, and about a month later, the work was done. So we got to complete the Barre Fire Department installation. She asked me she wanted me to find a kid who could be an apprentice for your, maybe he's retired now, your retiring mechanic, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
And she made sure to let me know that he was working during the blizzard of '78, which I was delivering newspapers during, but anyhow. But unfortunately, we couldn't get a kid, because I think a lot of it was bigger trucks and everything, and our
Yeah.
kids kind of focused on the
Diesel,
smaller
yeah.
stuff and everything else. But these are some other examples. Please, I say to you guys, just like I said, Jessica, if you know of projects, reach out, give us a call. There's certain limitations, if it's an older building that has lead paint, we can't do something like that. But there's lots of jobs, and these are just some examples of some of the things that we've been doing. If you skip on to page 9, there's a little pie chart there. One of the things I've really been trying to work on as I go out here is to get rid of some of the myths that have been thrown around about Monty Tech recently. And one of the talk is about, well, Monty Tech isn't a trade school anymore, everybody goes on to college. Just not true. This is our most recent graduating class. The colors in the blue are the 2- and 4-year college. You add that up, about 49% of our kids go on to 2-year college. But then the yellow is all the kids going into work, and that's 45% of our kids. So basically even. And if you flip over to the next page, if you break it down, what I'm trying to make sure I understand everybody is, we're not your grandparents' vocational school. It's not just the vocational trades. So when you look at so for instance, our health cluster, dental assisting, health occupations, veterinary science up there up top, our health occupation kids graduate with their CNA. They can be a certified nurse assistant. They're not gonna make a whole lot of money doing that. They need to go on to college to get in order to become an LPN or a registered nurse. Kind of thing. So it's no surprise when you look and you see, oh, okay, the majority of them are going on to college. It's understood, 20 of the 25. Then you go to our construction cluster. 17 of the 21 electricians going right into the workforce. 10 of the 13 house carpenters going right into the workforce. Plumbing, 16 of the 17 kids going right into the workforce. Where you would expect kids to go into the workforce, they're going to the workforce. Where kids might need to go on to college is gonna happen, it's because it's a lot of different trades. So if you hear anybody saying, oh, they're only going to college, please let everybody know, that's just not the case. So we just wanted to make sure we take care of that. We do make sure we get kids ready for both, so we did partner with Fitchburg State this year for the first time. Did a Monty Tech Day, allowed a bunch of our kids to go over, get specific tours just for them, looking at their trades. But then if you flip over to page 12 and 13, what we also do is we take kids directly to local companies. They tour the business, they either look for a co-op job, or in many cases, some of them are lining up jobs upon graduation, and these are just some of the great companies that we partnered with to make that happen. When you look at our co-op group overall, and actually I should update this now because Ms. Curry, our co-op coordinator, just told me that we're now over 200 kids are out on co-op. Our juniors started going out in January. If you're not sure what that is, instead of going to shop, those kids go to a local business, a local industry, and they work for the week and get paid to do it. And that's what we were hoping to do, is there would have been a co-op kid with the mechanic, it just didn't work out. But like I said, the most recent update, we're over 200 kids now that are out there. Another initiative you should just make sure that brings in some very important money. The state started this career technical initiative. This is for the adult workforce, so folks that are unemployed, underemployed, who want to go back and get some additional training. So the state provided this money, it's typically done at night, but obviously the money comes to help, improve the shops for those adult workforce folks. But our kids are in there during the day, so anything that we spend the money on helps our kids as well. So for instance, most recently, our whole welding shop, we replaced every single torch we had in the place. We increased the size as well. It helped the night school kids, it helped the day school kids. You can see the values have gone up as each round. Round 7 should be starting up in the fall, 810,000 for that. And you can see on pages, I think it's 16 and 17, some of the companies we work with and the different trades that we benefit from. The last one, I don't want to go through it entirely, but we need to make sure that we let everybody know. Everybody knows it's very difficult for Monty Tech in terms of the kids who don't get in. This current graduating class, freshman class, we had 850 eighth graders apply for 370 spots. So we're saying no to a whole lot of kids, and we know that. When I was coming in as superintendent, I said, listen, we need to find a way to try to expand. We're not gonna ask you to do this, but if you haven't seen in the paper, Whittier Tech is up in Haverhill. They have reached out to their towns because they're looking to build a new building. Their proposed price is $450 million. My guess is if I called and said, hey, you guys got $450 million, the answer would be go fly a kite. So now's not the time. Someday we'll have to be looking at that, but we have to look at other things. So what we looked at was, listen, maybe we need to find a satellite space. So 270 Westminster Street is about a mile down the road, mile and a half the road down the road towards Fitchburg from Monty Tech. This was an old empty warehouse, no, I shouldn't say old, it's a couple decades, but an empty warehouse that Wachusett had been using as a cold storage for their brewery. We have gone into a partnership to lease this building. Our students and our instructors, through a grant, that one grant you saw that was for $1.8 million, we will renovate it and turn this inside of this building into 3 programs, a house carpentry program, a plumbing program, and an electrical program. What we then did is we reached out to the 3 towns that had, or 3 districts that had the most students on the wait list right now, and that was Fitchburg, Gardner, and Narragansett. And we said, listen, you pick, you guys, we're gonna have you send in 84 juniors and seniors, combined 42 and 42. You pick the students, so we're not involved, they're picking the registers. More importantly, those students stay in that district. So the Chapter 70 money stays in that district, so they get to keep that money. The Chapter 74 money that each of those kids will get, because they're all gonna be in a vocational program, that's what's gonna come to us. So between grant money, some additional state money through another grant that we're gonna apply down the road, and that Chapter 74 money, that's how we're gonna finance this. Because I want to make sure that every town stood, because you're looking there saying, well, I don't see Quabbin on that list. No Chapter 70 local money from Monty Tech is going to this program, so you guys aren't in right now. Our hope is we're gonna get this off the ground and run it, and then we'd like to come back and look around and say to some of the towns, what space do you have that we might be able to open up as a satellite space that might help some of your students? This is a very innovative, no one else is doing this. There are this is called an after dark program. Typically for the after dark programs, the kids come in around, after they take their academics and then they come over to the vocational school around 3 or 4 in the afternoon kind of thing. When we proposed this, the superintendent said, listen, Tom, our kids are working extra jobs for their families, they're in football, they're in theater, they can't do anything after school. So we said, let's give it a shot during the school day. So they literally will be coming over to this facility during the school day. They'll do the A week, B week, just like we do. They'll come to us for a week, and they'll flip and they'll do their academics back in their home district. We're hoping this becomes a model for the rest of the state, if we can get this up and going and everything else. So just want to emphasize, this is a big initiative. You can go through it. I'm not going to necessarily go through the whole thing. It does break down the money, how it did in terms of the lease and everything else, our operating costs. But the two big takeaways is, 1, we hope to expand this down the road, and 2, it does not cost Barre any money in terms of Chapter 70 money coming to us or anything like that. So hopefully that wasn't too quick. If there's any specific questions, certainly take care of that. Otherwise, I'll turn it over to Tammy and let her do the thing. No, it's not a morning town.
I'm about fun, and mine is just numbers, so sad about that. I'm gonna be doing the PowerPoint. I think a lot of you guys know me, I'm Tammy Crockett, the business manager at Monty Tech. It's not my first year, and
Oh,
I've been
no.
there for
Well,
20
then I should say, I've been principal for the previous 8 years, so I've been in Monty Tech. So.
I've been enjoying doing this for 24 years, so.
There you go.
So we're gonna be talking about the proposed FY '24 budget. So I'd like to start out, we use the governor's numbers, just like our cities and towns do for this first budget, because that's the only numbers we have. So I'd like to just give you an overview of what's going on with the state for education. So the FY '24 Chapter 70, you can see on the first slide, is being funded at approximately a $586 million increase over the current year. They're continuing to fund what they call the Student Opportunity Act. This will be the third year of this act. And what that act did was it targeted, you can see the bullets here, specific items in the foundation budget that were being underfunded, weren't keeping up with inflation, et cetera. Benefits, guidance, you can see special ed. So they fund those additionally above the inflation factor, which normally is what goes into the foundation budget. So this is the third year, and you'll see that's why there's some larger increases to the foundation budget numbers because of this act. The next slide, that's entitled FY '24 Chapter 70 Foundation Budget. This is what the foundation budget looks like. This is what drives Monty Tech's budget, because we are so close to our required net school spending number. And net school spending, everybody here I'm sure knows, that's our required spend, minimum spend for our students, and it doesn't count transportation, debt service, or capital costs. So it's pretty much just your operational costs. So the rows 1 through 11, those are the foundation categories that I talked about. So the state funds each of these categories at different levels depending upon the grade group, as you can see going across the top, 1 through 7. As you get over to 7, which is vocational, those students get the highest per pupil rate in these categories, because vocational education is the most expensive type of education outside of special education. And that's where all of our students lie, in vocational. So you can see in column 7, our foundation enrollment number is 1,465. Now, foundation enrollment is different than pupils enrolled at Monty Tech. What that number includes is the students who live in our 18 communities that attend Monty Tech. It also includes the students that live in our 18 communities that school choice to another vocational school. And it also includes, we have a Chapter 74 practical nursing program. And it includes the students that reside in our member towns that attend that program. So that's our foundation enrollment numbers. Columns 8 through 13 are what they call incremental costs above base. So the students listed there are the same students that are counted in row 7, column 7, but they give you some additional funding for these categories of students because it costs more to educate these special populations. So you can see in column 8, special ed in district, 72. That is not our count of special ed students. If you look to the little legend to the bottom left, the third one down, it says special ed in district enrollment is an assumed percentage. So for a non-vocational, they would assume 3.9% of your enrollment. For a vocational school, they assume a 4.9%. So that's where the 72 comes into play, because we have closer to 250 or 260.
Yeah, about 236.
Okay, special ed students. And they give you additional monies in those categories. Column 9, we do not have any special ed tuition out students, as you have to be able to come to Monty Tech to be people there. 10 through 12 is for English learners. So our EL students, which we have 10, are in column 12 for the high school vocational column. And you can see we get additional monies for those pupils. Column 13 is your low-income students, and this is based on, you upload all your students to the state and they do a match through the Mass Health and all their programs for public assistance, and they match your kids and they come up with your count. We have 39.62% of our pupils are low income. If you look at rows 14 and 15, you can see that number I just gave you. So we're considered low income group 7 because we're in that range. So we get additional money for those pupils. They take all of those amounts and add them up into column 14. So again, our total count goes back to that original foundation enrollment. They add up all the rows and they come up to the final column. Monty Tech's required net school spending or foundation budget, they're interchangeable, is projected to be $29,486,021. Or if you break it down per pupil, which is just dividing into the 1465, you can see that our spending is $20,127 per pupil. So you'll hear me talk back to that a couple times in my presentation. Again, that's the required minimum, not counting the transportation capital and debt. The next slide talks to our chapter 78 that we're projected to get. So I'm really focusing on the right-hand side. You can see our foundation enrollments we just talked about, the 1465. Foundation budget, the 29 million, we just saw how that was calculated. The state does a calculation of the ability to pay for all of our 18 communities, and you'll see Barre's individually further on. And they've calculated the required minimums from our communities to be the 11,167,317. And then they simply take the difference between our foundation budget and they subtract the required contribution, and they come up with what our chapter 78 will be for the coming year. So you can see that's a $18,318,704. I think it's also important to note that our required net school spending number of 29 million is a 5.5% increase. Again, that's important because we pretty much are at required net school spending. So literally that's what our budget went up this year, pretty much based on that. You'll actually see that on the next slide. I apologize that it's a little squishy. It's called budget summary. So looking at the proposed FY24 column, you can see we just saw how the net school spending was calculated. Our transportation costs, $2,399,080. This is our contracted agreements with our bus companies. We have 30 buses for our back and forth to school, and we provide 3 vans as well, so that's what that represents. Our above net school spending. So this is the amount that's built into this budget that's actually above the minimum requirement, $150,000. I want to point out that that is 0.5% above our requirement. And then our capital budget, $490,000. We had a facilities conditions assessment done about 4 years ago, which prioritized the needs of our district and grounds. And so this is taken right from that for high priorities, and it's actually our football bleachers and our fire alarm system. And vehicles, we reduced that to just purchasing a trailer for this year so that we could keep our capital budget netting the 2 lines out as only an increase of $15,000 over the current year. So that brings us to our total budget of $32,535,101. And you can see that's a 5.64% increase, mostly driven by the net school spending increase. The next row shows the chapter 70 we just talked about, and then the required minimums as calculated by the state. So the next section is transportation and other, 2,549,080. Literally, that is from above, adding transportation plus above net school spending. And then from there, we subtract out estimated transportation aid. So that's from our cherry sheets that the governor put out. What they estimating as a regional school, we get reimbursed back for some of our transportation costs. That's our estimate for next year. We also have what's called a regional transportation reimbursement fund. What we do with that fund is when we get when the district gets additional monies for transportation above what they budgeted. So you can see FY '23, we've budgeted $1,549,256. If we get, because the actuals sometimes come out back more, if we get more than that, the school committee votes to put that extra into what's called the Regional Transportation Fund account, and we use it the following year to reduce our community assessments for our transportation. So the 75,000 is an estimate right now because I do not know what we'll get for FY '23. So the school committee usually votes, this happens more in June or July before you get our final budget, when that number is known. We're also planning to offset this assessment with 250,000 of our E&D, which will bring this piece of the assessment to 524,080. The next section is our capital budget. So from above, again, 490 plus 10 is the 500, and we're proposing using 200,000 from our E&D to offset this, leaving a $300,000 assessment for that piece. You can see at the bottom, our excess and deficiency was certified by the Department of Revenue at $1,006,541. And you know you deal with regional schools, so you know that that is the equivalent to your free cash. We're only allowed, at regionals, only allowed to have up to 5% in that account. Ours is at 3.1 and we're percent, and we're proposing to use almost half of our E&D to offset the coming year's assessments. The next slide, which is broken out by function, is kind of the spending plan. I'm gonna focus on the highlights of the larger. This is what makes up our budget. You also have the budget book, which you can look at and review in more detailed line items.
Good Friday night thing.
Yeah, or you need to fall asleep. So some of the major increases, as you can see, is in our instruction function, teaching services. So this budget represents our contractual collective bargaining COLAs, steps, columns for teachers, and for all staff actually. So that represents that there. The other large increase in this is textbooks and instructional materials. We're replacing about 5 series of textbooks for different programs. Spanish being one, which hasn't been updated for approximately 11 years.
2013.
And some math and some science textbooks, as well as we're purchasing an electric vehicle / hybrid vehicle trainer for our auto tech program so that they can start to learn on servicing cars of the now and future. So that's about 55, 60,000 of that increase as well as just our consumables alone. As you know, inflation. So we're a large consumer of food, welding gases, lumber, copper, wire, everything you see going up. So several of our shops are actually seeing 20% increases or better in their consumables alone. So that's, yeah, it's tough. So that's a large portion of that. Student transportation. So again, this number now includes the transportation I told you about on the front, the contractual, as well as we provide late buses. So we provide transportation of pupils for 4 and 6 o'clock, for those that have sports or stay after for clubs, etc. We provide transportation for them, so that's included in here, as well as some of our other busing needs. So that's what that represents. Another large increase you can see in the 5,000 series, employee benefits. I could probably came here for the last 10 years or 20 and said the same thing. We feel kind of fortunate. We're only looking at a 6% increase in health insurance. We were kind of expecting double digits, and we're happy to report we're not seeing that, but it's still significant. It's just compounding at great numbers. So that is some of the larger expenditure changes in this area. And stop me if you have any questions along the way. The next slide talks about our enrollment numbers. So these, both sides of these are important for a couple of different reasons. The left side is our foundation enrollment. So that's the student, again, that goes back to that, students that go to Monty Tech, students that live in your communities, that school choice to other vocational programs, and the LPN students. This is the basis of your capital apportionment. So as you can see, Barre went from 50 to 42 students. So there was a decrease of 8 in our foundation enrollment. The next column is your school attending children number. This is grades 1 through 12. We don't do kindergarten or pre-K because the district agreement was signed before those were ever in place. We get these numbers from your superintendent of schools for all school-aged eligible attending children. So you can see for Barre, it currently is 704. The other important piece of this is that, so this affects your capital apportionment or assessment, as well as this is what drives your freshman quota. So Barre's 704 represents 2.78%, which is on the next slide, all the percentages. You represent 2.78%. So the school committee just approved at their April meeting a quota of
For 365.
365 for the freshman class. So Barre will be represented, your quota will be 2.78% of that class. And that's how each county gets their quotas, based on those percentages. So I'm gonna skip over to the slide that now says foundation enrollment in regional districts in required minimums. So again, this is a full snapshot of all of our communities, as well as the required minimum contributions for each community. So focusing on Barre, you went from 50 to 42. So you can see that your required minimum went from 349, 848 to 316, 705. On the next set of slides, you're gonna see how the state calculated that. This is the part of my presentation where I call it, please don't shoot the messenger. So the state calculates a community's ability to pay, or wealth factor, 2 ways. They use your 2022 equalized property values, as well as the 2020 income. So you can see in rows 1 through 3. So row 1 is the 2020 equalized valuation of the properties in Barre, 583, 632, 100. They come up with a uniform property percentage. So what the state does is they say, for everything that all the communities have to contribute across the state, we want half of that to come from property wealth and half of it to come from income. So they have to take the values of the entire state for each of those. And then they come up with this percentage. They use this percentage, 0.3534%, for every community in the Commonwealth from A to Z. That is the same percentage rate. So that's what they use, and for row 3, they say local effort from property wealth for Barre is $2,062,362. The next section is your income section. So you can see they calculated the 2020 income, and then they use the uniform income percentage, 1.5329. Again, A to Z, every community, same percentage. So they've calculated Barre's local effort from income, $2,554,375. They take the results of 3 plus 6, and they call it your combined effort yield. So that's what the state has calculated Barre can afford to pay towards their schools, towards the foundation budget of their schools. And that's the $4,616,737. Row 8, FY24 foundation budget, that's Barre's portion of the foundation budgets of all the schools you belong to. So pretty much there's no students in Barre. So Quabbin and Monty Tech. So Barre represents 11,141,210 of those 2 school districts. They calculate a maximum local contribution at 82.5%. So even if you're the wealthiest of wealthy communities, the state is still gonna give that community 17.5% of state aid chapter 70. So they set a cap there. You can see here, that's the 9 million. For row 10, they say, what's the lesser of the 2? What's the lesser of the cap or what Barre can afford? So in this case, they take what Barre, they say can afford, $4,616,737. So then we're gonna shoot over to row 13. They say, what was Barre's required contribution this year to its schools? That's $3,971,383. Then they take a municipal revenue growth factor, calculated by the Department of Revenue, and you'll know better even than me, it has to do with levy limits, growth, factors that you probably disagree with. So for Barre's case, and again, this number is different for every community. They're using 3.96%. So they multiply that, and they come up with row 15, your required preliminary contribution, $4,128,650. They compare that to what they said they think you could afford in row 10. So they say, there's a shortfall from the $4,128,000 to the $4,616,000. How much is that shortfall? In row 21, they say it's $488,087. And the shortfall percentage is 4.38%. So in row 23, it says if your shortfall is between 2.5% and 7.5%, we're gonna add an additional 1%. So they take that 39,714, that represents 1% of row 13, which was your requirement for this year. They take that number and they add it to row 15, which was what they came up with for your required contribution. And that's how they get row 26, your new final required contribution to your school districts will be $4,168,364. The next slide will show you how they apportion that. The top half represents FY23, so I'm gonna focus on the bottom half for FY24. So you can see row 6, the foundation enrollment. You have 743 students in the foundation enrollment at Quabbin, and you have 42 at Monty Tech. What is your share of the foundation budget? Well, for Monty Tech, and it's calculated the same for Quabbin, different numbers. For Monty Tech, it's 42 students times the first number I showed you on the foundation budget page, 20,127 per student. So they multiply those out, and that's how they come up with your foundation budget share of Monty Tech. They do the same thing for Quabbin, that'll just be a different number per pupil. So taking Monty Tech and Quabbin as a whole, you can see that Monty Tech represents 7.6% of the whole. So they multiply that into row 5, what they said was your required contribution for this year, and that's how they come up with $316,705 for the required minimum contribution to Monty Tech. Same way how they calculated it for Quabbin as well, same methodology. So you can see your requirement went down for Monty Tech, $33,123.
And that's why there's less students accepted from Barre as well?
So, it depends. So some of it might have been that we changed our formula for how kids get in. So what was happening, and it may have been affecting Barre, is what we used to have was, after every kid got in, we just ranked every kid based on their score. And if a kid said, I don't want to come to Monty Tech, I changed my mind, we just took the kid off the top of the list. What was happening to some towns was, let's say Barre kids end up scoring really well one year. You may look at your quota and say, oh, I should expect we're gonna have, 10 kids get into Monty Tech. But if we're picking off those kids off the top of the list, all of a sudden we're coming to you saying, guess what? 17 kids came to Monty Tech, so you're gonna be owing more, the following year. Towns kind of say, could you do something about that? So we changed it now, that what it works is if a kid from Barre is at the top of the list, if a kid leaves instead from Barre, says, I don't want to go, he leaves, he's only replaced with, or she is replaced with a Barre kid. So if a Fitchburg kid leaves, where it used to be that a Barre kid might be able to take that spot because they were at the top, no, you go to the next Fitchburg kid. That way, you're, as towns, all right, we don't have to worry about budgeting, we're planning a number, we know what our quota typically normally is, we don't have to worry about paying for additional kids. Some towns like that because it helps their budget. A couple towns have said, well, we just want every kid who can get in. So it kind of is a mixed thing, but budget-wise, it helps out a little bit. So it may have been a thing where some of your kids may not.
And
It also might be that LPN kids were in one year and were in the next
school
year.
choice too, because Barre
school
does
choice.
have school choice, they
Yeah.
can go to Pathfinder.
Correct.
Another change that happened this year, so another thing that could have happened is more kids from Barre graduated, then came in the
Yep.
new class. But another big factor is Holden and Harvard
Oh, yes.
never filled quotas, always far below their quotas. And Holden, as being the second largest school attending children in their district, has a significant
It's about 46 kids.
46 kids. They didn't even send half or less. So those empty spots went to towns, because they were just empty. From Holden, there was nobody to replace them. So Holden filled their quota plus a wait list this year.
Oh, wow.
So we didn't have extra spots.
The Holden
from
budget
there.
went up a little bit.
The Holden budget, you see,
Yeah.
the
Yes.
Holden budget went up, 320,000 this year,
Wow.
because they went up by 23 students. So that was another reason.
That's
So
very
it's not that we took less, you met quota. It's just the delta between graduating and coming in and not the backfill effect.
And you're the primary tech for Holden?
We are.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're their tech school.
Yeah, we have all of Wachusett except for Rutland.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Surprised some of it doesn't go down to Worcester.
Rutland does, right?
Rutland goes to
Yeah.
Bay
Yeah.
Path, yeah.
Oh, Bay Path.
Yeah, Bay Path, yeah. Holden's with
Worcester
the
Worcester
crowd.
Tech is just for Worcester students.
Yeah, they don't school choice anymore. So
Well,
there's
I think Lester does
42 kids from Barre, or that's just that number based on whatever, there aren't actually just 42 kids from Barre that go?
I think there's 36.
You have
I
36,
thought it was.
you currently, on this, you
Under-
have 36 students from Barre who are actually enrolled at Monty Tech. The other 6 that make that up live in Barre and go to,
Pathfinder or something, okay.
yep,
You
Yep.
tend to find the, Eric Duda, who's the superintendent of Pathfinder, lets me know, I'm not sure if this matters, but it sounds like, for some reason, a lot of kids who technically live in Southbury end up choosing to Pathfinder.
yeah, it is,
I
yeah.
don't know if you guys probably know locally why that might be an issue, but that seems to be the case.
So what happens is the same thing that happens for like a comprehensive district. The chapter 70 and assessment goes to the school, and then we pay the school choice out to Pathfinder, same as.
Okay.
So the next one is, it's giving you a breakdown. It says Barre assessment and enrollment history for 2 years. So, because I want you to see where the actual numbers, how they are coming into effect. So you can see your foundation budget for '24 went down students. Your required minimum went down, we just saw how that was calculated. The transportation and operating, again, that was based on the budget summary and Barry's percent of our operating assessment. So that went up by 2,190, as well as the capital assessment went up by 765. So those calculated bring it to a total proposed assessment of $340,067. What I do to the right, town's assessment per people, that is the town's from the tax base, what you're paying per pupil. So it's really just your assessment divided by your foundation enrollment. So Barre will pay $8,097 per pupil. The next slide is really a snapshot of all of our communities, and it does the same exercise as I just went through with Barre. The numbers, the foundation enrollment, the piece of the assessment, et cetera, so that you can see how it affects every district, every town. The last slide is our FY21 per pupil expenditures, and it's just based against vocational schools. So you can see we're spending approximately for our in-district students $22,085 per student. And you can see we rank about halfway down in the vocational schools of per pupil spending. Certainly not in quality of education.
Yes.
That's an amount.
Of course.
And that's my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Oh, it's a
Thank you.
great presentation.
Yeah.
Did you be able to send these to me electronically as well?
Yes, and
Absolutely.
I'm surprised.
Yeah, but we usually do them. So
Julie may have sent it to Sandra,
Okay.
because we did send out a packet, so we'll
I
make sure.
received, yeah, we received this, the letter.
Okay.
No, we would have just emailed it out
Okay.
yesterday, so we'll make sure it gets to you.
All right, cool.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Yep, it'll be the whole thing.
All three.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I know, I appreciate the in-depth report. I mean, it's great seeing the school with all the grants and other financial avenues that help support the students, right?
We're very fortunate.
Any other members have questions for the folks from Monty Tech? No, thank you very much. We appreciate everything. Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Yes.
Great job.
Thank you.
All right.
Yes.
And we have up next, Mike, is it Mike? Mike did make it, so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, how are you? Mike, right?
Yes.
I did get your email.
You did, okay.
I didn't print it out, but I got the info. Okay, you got it.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you for coming out.
I was gonna say, you guys are hiring too.
We are, yes.
I've seen that post like 4 or 5 times.
It's hard
It's
to,
all 911
hard to get
dispatchers.
people, yeah.
I
It's very
work
hard.
for a union. I used to represent all the state police 911
Oh, did you?
dispatchers. Yeah,
Oh, wow. Jeez.
not fun.
No, no, not at all.
Interesting negotiations the past couple of years.
So I'll go page by page.
Yeah, jump right through it.
Sure. Starting on page 2 just shows the different submissions of the actual draft. Page 3 shows my current staffing right now. We do have one vacant spot at this point. We are in the hiring process for that. We just had someone resign to go to the state police as a forensic technician, so that's that opening there. Moving on to page page 4, shows that resignation, gives a little description of who we are and what we do. Page 5 shows some statistics with our 911 call volume, which is broken up into 3 categories, which is your actual 911 calls, 10-digit calls, and administrative. 10-digit calls are an old emergency number that was published way back in the day. It's, I think here is like 978-355. I can't remember the last 4 numbers, but it's been published in Google. It was the old emergency number that you used to call way back in the day. It's still active. It still comes into the 911 system. So we still actively get calls from that number. Administrative is a line that is utilized between dispatch centers throughout Massachusetts. So as you can see in 2023, so far up to this date, just alone there, 889 calls just between PSAPs, 720 10-digit calls, and 5,519 911 calls currently up to this date.
This is total, we don't have a breakdown for Barre.
No, so currently right now, the new system that the state 911 came out with doesn't break it down by town yet. It is being worked on so that these regional centers can actually provide those statistics for each community. So,
We'd like to know.
yeah, definitely. So it's definitely being worked on, and right now we're looking to surpass fiscal 2022's numbers at this point right now, with 3 months still left of the actual fiscal year. The next little block below that is CAD calls. CAD calls are just anytime someone calls in, we have to enter in that information into our records management system. That's what a CAD call is. So far this year, 66,000 CAD calls. And again, we're looking to surpass fiscal 2022's numbers.
Is that non-emergency, animal control, stuff like that?
That's everything, yeah.
Okay.
Notifications, animal control, highway, sewer, water, your 911 calls, non-emergency calls, pretty much everything that you can think of. And just recently, as of December, our business lines, we have a new program that allows us to track our statistics for business lines. As of December 1st till now, roughly 9,700 business line calls that we've received within the dispatch center. So that's a new program. It's good to have now, and now we can track that as well. Moving on to page 6. Now we're getting into the actual budget now. Page 6 starts with my purchase services section. There's only a few modifications. I know a lot of people are new here, so I'll go through each one just in case anybody has any questions. 5200-01 is department cellular service. Each supervisor in my department has a cell phone, so they can be reached 24/7 during their on-call periods. Myself, I have a department cell phone as well as an air card for my laptop to utilize. And we also have one other cell phone for the center itself in case of system failures, which we've had in previous occasions. So that is going to stay level funded for this year. The next item is 5200-02 is communication tower generator service contracts. Currently right now we have a contract with the Barre Tower. That's all preventative maintenance. That is going to be increased another $1,400 to cover the Hubbardson Tower that's going to be coming online within the next month and a half. That's that increase there. 5200-03, which is our radio equipment maintenance service contract. That whole line item is to cover pretty much we have now 1, 2, 3, 4, soon to be 5 tower locations. That's for our radio engineer to go around and do preventive maintenance on all the equipment, which there is now probably roughly over $4 million worth of equipment with all 5 sites. That also includes the service contract for Avtech Enterprise, which is our radio consoles within the dispatch center. Those are the consoles that the dispatchers utilize to dispatch out first responders to all of their calls. So that's going to stay level funded. 5204, internet and phone services. That's for our fiber connection within the dispatch center, as well as our business line connection through Crocker Communications. That is going to be level funded for this year. 5205 is CGIS maintenance agreement. That's an agreement with the state of Massachusetts for accessing CGIS's system, which is the criminal justice information system. That's where we run all our queries on all parties when they're arrested, motor vehicle stops, and per se. That is also level funded. 5206, which I just noticed is a error. It's not Swift Reach 911 anymore. It's Rutland Regional Alerts through Rave Alert. That is our reverse 911 system that all 5 communities have access to do mass notifications out to the citizens during emergencies or road closed due to a structured fire or a motor vehicle accident, all the way down to non-emergency notifications, town meeting, anything like that, scheduled street sweepings if the DPW wants to utilize it. A lot of them don't, but it's there for everybody's use. It is paid for. The reverse 911 portion for emergencies does get used a lot throughout the 5 communities.
So that's, sometimes we'll get like a call for like OCAM for like, I don't know, I think they even did a reverse call for like their town meeting or something. Is that same program?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
So Barry has access to do that as well?
Yes. Yep. Every department and every town department as well. So like fire, police, DPW, the town can utilize it, council and agent can use it, pretty much everyone, because the system's very customizable and the security has been dialed down so that certain users only have access to certain lists, so they're not sending out messages to the entire town of Barre when they shouldn't be.
Yeah.
So it's very customizable. That option is out there.
How is it input? On a computer or a laptop or, phone or?
Say that again, I'm
How
sorry.
do you input the information?
Information, like all the people.
People want to run.
Yeah, so we get a lot of the information from Verizon for all the landlines. All cell phones, everybody has to sign up for that, which you can find that on our website. It's quick and easy. There's an app for it as well for citizens to sign up. You can select any list you. So there's going to be a bunch of lists. There's going to be Town of Barre emergency alerts, Town of Barre non-emergency. Trying to think, there's about 40 or 50 different lists throughout all 5 communities. But you can go in and select, and then go back, and if you feel like you're getting over-inundated with messages, you can go out and unselect that one and go forward from there.
Actually, what I was thinking about is the input from like the fire department. How do they input their message to the system?
Oh, to go out, so I can give like the fire chief, the captains down there, user credentials to log into the system and send that message.
In a computer?
Computer, phone,
Phone, okay.
pretty much anything really
Good.
at this point, yeah.
That's good.
Yep.
Now, does anyone from any of the departments in town utilize that at this, right now? Do you know?
Barre PD uses it the most.
Okay.
I think they're the only town agency right now, or town department that utilizes the system.
Yeah, I get a lot of notification when the Stetson
Stetson,
kids
yes.
like run out.
Yeah, we use it a lot for that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and it posts to, it'll reverse phone call, it'll send text, email, it'll post to the actual agency's Facebook and Twitter account as well.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm familiar because I think I was signed up for everything when I first joined. I was getting like the OCAM Board of Health notifications.
Yes, yeah.
And I was like, oh, there's like 17 times today. I was like, I don't know what's going on. I had to go in and adjust. I was curious though, because I mean, one thing I hear from other residents in town is you know, things like town meetings.
Yeah, I was
Right?
thinking that too.
You know, and that would be like the town administrator. Okay.
Yep, yeah, I can provide him, I can provide Sandra as well, an account as well. It's
No
very
excuses
simple.
then.
That one was level funded. 5207 is I'm responding, that's a third-party alerting system that when we enter a call into the CAD system, that will page out the address, location, and incident description of what's going on out to the firefighters. They also utilize that same system to notify us when they're responding to a call. So we'll tone it out. On their phone, there's an app, they can just hit, it'll come up and they'll just hit I'm responding. On our end, we got a dashboard on our computer that shows all 5 communities, and then when a call does go out, they'll stop, their name will start popping up, and it'll give it an ETA from where they're at to the station. So it'll show, yeah, James, I have a hard time saying his last name, DeViglio, has a 4-minute ETA to the station, so we know that someone's responding.
Okay.
It's used widely across, it cuts down on radio communication and traffic clutter. That one is also level funded. 5208 is my National Grid electric account. That's for the tower sites. Currently right now, we pay for just Barre, but Hubbardston's coming on in a month and a half, and we have to increase that to accommodate that tower site.
Does that item get spread to all the towns?
Yes, it does, yep.
Even though it's Hubbardston?
Yep, yep. Yeah, because right now it's just Barre, and now we're adding Hubbardston, so it goes everywhere. 5209 is the post office box, which I was just told that it's being increased substantially to $225 a year instead of the $99. Not sure why, they just said it's their increase and what they're doing, so. 5200-10 is Tritech Software Systems. That is our records management system. When I refer to CADs, the CAD system, that is the CAD system. This is the annual support and maintenance contract with Tritech, and that is being increased by $4,355.03, which I just found out today. With that being said, for fiscal FY 2023 development grant through the Massachusetts State 911 Department, we did receive $328,000 to go out and purchase a new CAD system. This system currently right now is outdated, discontinued, and we're being pushed off of it. And the increases to the annual support have been drastic over the last 4 to 5 years. So we are currently looking for a new vendor at this point, which will hopefully reduce that total number, which was $62,000 annually down, hopefully back into the 40s, 40,000.
And the new system is 300?
It'll cost approximately $328,000. 5200-11 is for IT services. That's provided by CM Geeks, which I believe the town fair is contracted with as well. That I believe is level funded for this year as well. 5200-12 is Microsoft Office 365. That is our department's email accounts as well as our storage for all our documents as well. That is being increased due to their annual increase. No real explanation. 5200-13 is e-dispatches. This is again another third-party alerting system for the fire departments. This one's a little bit different from our responded, where this one, when we initially tone it out over the radio frequency, it'll capture the first 45 seconds of the audio that we put out. It'll record that, take that, and send it to their cell phones as pretty much a page. It'll go to the phone, their phone will start making a noise, and automatically start playing that audio. So if they're not carrying one of these bulky radios around with them 24/7, they still will hear every call that goes out. It also allows them to go into that app and listen live to that radio frequency, so they don't have to carry around a bulky radio everywhere they're at. That is also level funded. Excuse me. 5200-14 is my, all other services and maintenance costs, that will come up throughout the year. That is also being increased by $300 to maintain, the two mini split AC units, one that's located in the actual dispatch center and the other one that's actually in the radio IT, UMT, the climate control. 5200-15 for SNAP wireless air cards. The center actually pays for all the air cards that are installed in every single cruiser throughout the 5 communities, as well as most of the fire apparatus. Mainly it's just the ambulances that have air cards to access the internet. So we pay for those as well. That is gonna be level funded for this year as well. 5200-16, Director of Vehicle Maintenance, Fuel and Insurance. That is going to be increased by $3,500 to cover the lease, the new lease payment to replace the 2010 Ford Explorer that is out of service currently right now. And per my contract, the town has to provide a vehicle to access these tower sites. Right now, it's at a $3,500 increase. I am will be working with our new town administrator that's coming in at another avenue where we're going to possibly just erase the $3,500 increase and keep it level funded. We have a couple other avenues that we can look at this point. 5200-17 is our APCO and telecom and maintenance contract. That is for our EMD online system, which provides us pre-arrival instructions for callers who are experiencing a medical emergency. Whether it's us providing CPR instructions to someone that's never done CPR before, to administering an EpiPen, Narcan, and a variety of other different items. Also, it does triage each call, depending on what it is. We gather that information and then provide that to all the EMS responders that are responding to further prepare them for what they're walking into. That concludes the purchase services account. Any questions before moving on? Page 9, wages. So with this account, really only 2 of the figures are final figures in that little spreadsheet. The other ones are still being negotiated as the union is in negotiations. The contract does end June 30th. They start negotiations with the new town administrator on April 25th, and hopefully we'll have that completed within a week or 2. So the 2 figures that are final are obviously my salary, which is $94,000. It's a $2,000 increase, and the deputy director's position, which is $73,950, which is a $1,450 increase. The other 4 accounts, I added a 3% just as a worst case scenario, depending on how negotiations go. So it's just a placeholder at this point. So that final figure could be reduced after April 25th. So with the worst case scenario, the overall increase to that line is $6,535.07 to the wage line. Just another note in regards to that, we did apply again under the FY24 development grant for my salary as well as the deputy director's salary to be reimbursed by the state 911 department. This has been past practice and has been awarded the last 3 years so far. So FY23, my salary as well as the deputy director's salary is being reimbursed, so we will see a surplus for FY24.
You said you were putting a 3% increase in.
Yep.
I think you said that. But I don't see 3%, I see a -2.
Yeah.
1.
So the -2 is because we removed it, so halfway through the year, the deputy director's position was implemented, and we reduced the number of supervisors, and that's why that line item went down 2%. We went down to 2 supervisors instead of 3. Yep, and I don't know why those other numbers are not adding up to 3%. I just let me check that. My master sheet with all the wages labeled out does have 3% built into it.
3% for each category.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Page 10 moves on to the next section of the budget, which is the indirect charges. First line item, 5701, being level funded. That ultimately is the portion of the building that the rec occupies. It will include the portion of the purchase services, supplies, maintenance, and utilities for the building. The second line, facility fixed cost, again, level funded. This will include the portion of the property and casualty insurance and debt services of the building. 03, I should have deleted out there, we haven't utilized that in the last few years. So, health insurance, dental, and I believe the Medicare line item currently has a 10% increase into that line. But just recently, I believe, actually, I think it was yesterday, the select board voted to change healthcare providers. So the town of Rutland will be changing over to Harvard Pilgrim, which instead of the 10% increase into the healthcare coverage, it's going to be a 0.08. Yes, 0.08 increase. So it's a substantial decrease to those lines. I will have those figures next week for my town treasurer. She's currently working on those right now for me. So they do say, well, the 5204 health insurance, it does show a $10,000 increase, but that will be decreased as well as the next line item.
That was 0.08%?
0.08, yep.
Percent?
Yes, sir. Yep. So both 5704 and 5705 are going to be reduced. I'll have those figures next week. 5706 is our flexible insurance. That's level funded for this year. 5708 is basic life insurance, again, level funded. Medicare is going to be reduced, again, that falls under that 0.08. 5700-10 is the Worcester County retirement. That is our portion of the town's assessment from Worcester County, and that was increased 9.9% by that. So that is a $8,504.08 increase to that line. So currently, right now, it's showing a $20,000 increase to that section of the budget, which will not be moving forward. It's going to be reduced.
Could be less,
Yeah.
10 grand less.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, we can hope.
That concludes that one. Next page, 11, is supplies and uniforms.
I have one question.
Yes, go ahead.
On the facilities,
Yep.
utilities, how is that
Yep.
building broke down? I mean, do we pay for the fire department's
Nope.
electric bill?
So it's broken down by square footage. So they
Okay.
took the square footage of the dispatch center,
Mhm.
my office, and the radio/IT room.
Okay.
So that square footage was added together, and that's how they broke it.
Okay. As long as you don't leave the garage doors open.
Exactly.
Go ahead, sorry.
No, that's okay. Page 11 is supplies and uniforms. Supplies account has been level funded for this year. Uniforms, we had to increase by $1,000 due to the inflation from the vendor that we utilize. Shirts have gone up drastically. We currently are looking at a new vendor to hopefully reduce that number as well, but there's only so many out there.
Are you guys public facing?
Yes, so we do have a public lobby that we do. If we didn't, I wouldn't have.
Yeah, no, I agree.
We are hoping, the town is still trying to move us to the building next door, which is called the Town Annex in Rutland. It's that square brick building in between the public safety building and the big white town hall building. We are trying to move into that building to further expand operations, bring in more communities to reduce these town assessments. So that is still currently being worked on for the future. Last page, yeah, page 12, which is the overall summary to the budget.
When you, excuse me,
Yes, sir.
when you bring in new towns,
Yep.
is that cost won't be spread to your existing towns?
So when we bring on a new community, depending on what the center actually has to upgrade or provide, if we don't have to provide more staffing, so like, per se, we take on, Paxton's already with Watcher, so I'm just using that as an example. If we took Paxton, we would not have to put on additional personnel to cover that call flow, which would further reduce costs to the communities. Paxton would end up taking, so the way the assessments are broken down is by a population basis. So currently, right now, we have a population total from all 5 communities of 25,053 as our total population. Currently, right now, Barry's percentage of that is 20.06. Hardison is 16.96, Ocam is 7.6, Rutland 37.53, and Warren, which is 17.77. So depending on what their population is, they would end up taking some of that percentage away from all the other communities, which would further reduce your percentage, would end up reducing your assessment. The larger the community, yes, we're gonna have some operating costs, but they're gonna end up taking that bigger percentage. Like right now, Rutland has the largest percentage at 37. If, per se, for an example, we took on Gardner alone has, I believe, 25,200 people, I believe. So that's pretty much the exact same of what all 5 communities have. They would pretty much take on 75% of the budget, and then the other 5 communities would pick up the rest of that 25%. So that's why we're looking at another building. That building would be fully paid by the state 911 department by a development grant. So there would be no additional cost to the communities to renovate and outfit that building. The only operating costs we'd be looking at would be personnel and equipment moving forward if we were to expand and bring on other communities.
Along with that conversation, statewide, what do you see as there been several other dispatch areas organized, or,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, is it a growing trend?
Yep, so that's where the
coming up?
state's pushing the money towards.
Yes.
They're reducing the amount of state funding that they're giving to single PSAP centers, like a single PSAP like Fitchburg. They are alone, they're not regionalized. They're reducing their funding and providing all this money to the regional centers. It's spreading, and it's spreading quick. The map keeps on getting updated, which I have in my office. A lot of the state is regionalized. Pretty much all of Western Mass is all regionalized. I
In
think there's-
small groups of
Oh,
4 or
no.
5 towns, or?
No, so Western Mass, there
Yeah.
is 2 large regional centers. I think that both of them probably have 15 to 20 towns in each center, which pretty much takes up all Western Mass. There, I think, is maybe 6 towns or cities in Western Mass that are not regionalized. And that's from Central Mass all the way out west to the New York border. But it is growing more. The eastern part of Mass is slowly starting to catch up to western side, and they're growing real quick.
They're gonna be huge centers, though.
Oh, yeah, yes, they are.
Compared to what we have.
Yeah, yes.
And what about the grants? Like, is
Yep.
that something you see lasting for the foreseeable future, or is that,
There has been
We're
no
not-
mention of any of those dissipating anytime soon.
and that comes in from the state,
Yep.
part of the 911 network?
Yep, so there's a few different grants. There's the development grant, which is a competitive grant, which you do mostly all your capital expenditures out of. Then there's the support and incentive grant, which we mainly take the whole support incentive grant, which I believe is $539,873, and we put that towards all our wages. But there is other categories that dispatch centers can utilize that funding for under that, but we just use it to offset wages. It's the best avenue at this point right now. Then there is the training grant, so that's why you don't see anything about our training in this budget, because it is fully paid for by the state 911 department every year. That's sort of the class fees, that's travel costs. If we have to do lodging, they'll pay for lodging as well. So our entire training budget is fully funded by the state 911 department. And then there's the EMD grant, which is our emergency medical dispatch, which they also provide us costs for our CPR, continuing education for that as well. So that's all fully funded. And those are non-competitive grants. So each year we apply for 4 grants, and so far, since I've been in this position, which I'm going on 7 years, there's only been 1 year that we did not get the development grant.
And what about, so right now, regional dispatch is overseen only by the town of Rutland.
Yes, right now it's a host community model.
Okay.
That's what it is right now. We've had previous meetings with the town administrators for all 5 communities, review the MOU. The towns want to move towards a district model, but it's trying to find out how to fund it. Because moving to a district model, there's gonna be a lot more cost involved. Because currently right now, you are utilizing pretty much all of the town of Rutland's services, whether it's town treasurer, administrative, legal, all of that, you're utilizing all their services. Payroll, everything. Going into a district, the district now has to find all of those services on their own, and now that becomes part of the budget. Just to compare, a regional center the size of us, which is like Neshoba, their overall budget is closer to $3 million right now.
Their district.
They're a district, yes. Yep.
How many towns?
5,
Oh,
yeah, 5 or 6. So pretty much, yeah.
Higher population, though, right?
Higher call volume, and I think their population is a little bit higher, yes. Yep. And the way they do their assessments, it's take the overall budget, and just split it however many towns there are. If it's 6 ways, it's 6 ways.
Oh, not according to population?
Oh, no. No, so like OCAM, if they were to go to Neshoba, I don't think they'd be able to survive, because I think right now their assessments are at 190. I just talked to one of their supervisors, I think they're at 190 across the board. So, and looking at OCAM, they're currently at 52 to 64,000.
Interesting information.
So,
Are you all technically like employees of the town of Rutland?
yes. Yeah.
There was a call center down Franklin, like a handful of years ago, 2019.
Yep.
They had gone, I forget who they had merged with, but there was like a standalone center. And the employees were all upset because they went from being a municipal employee to like a private employee.
Yes.
But you guys are like, you get the best of both worlds.
Right.
You get to buy healthcare at a town price.
Yep.
I get you.
And do we pay out the dispatch, do you know, is it weekly, or is it one set rate throughout, like, is it
It's
one
one
check?
payment, yeah, so the MOU, that was just revised, is one payment, and that's 30 days after July 1st.
Okay. Because we,
Throughout the year, if there's any surplus at the end of the year, it's applied to next year's assessments.
Okay.
So that was applied to, so there is surplus from FY '22, which will apply to FY '23. So, yes, those are your FY '23 assessments at the beginning of the year.
Mhm.
Those will be reduced at the end of
Okay. Yeah, to get, same thing happened last year.
the year. Yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So overall to the town of Barre, without the adjustments that you mentioned, you're looking at a 5.18% increase at the 167,633.83.
Which is $8,267.29 total.
But that should be
Increase. And that should decrease.
a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna have an increase on the wages, right?
No, I'm hoping a decrease. It's at 3%, that's worst case scenario.
But your page said 1%, right?
Yeah, that's wrong, so I have to go back and check that. My master sheet shows 3%. That was worst case scenario.
Now, the total number here, that's what comes off of here? The 1%, or is that coming off of the 3% number that you have?
Where are you looking at, I'm sorry?
The 167, like the town's assessment. Does that include, is that including the 1% from wages, or is that including 3% from wages?
3%.
Okay.
Yeah. So overall, the total increase to the total operating budget is $39,537.14. 3% increase overall. I'm looking to get that 39 down to 30 and even below that at this point, over the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
So that's my goal. Which will further reduce you guys' assessment.
Yeah. And if the town, you're going back to that rave alert thing, if
Yes,
the town utilizes that, doesn't increase costs, that's part
Nope.
of the whole factor, and,
Nope.
okay.
it's one set price, and as many users as the town wants, they're afforded.
So it seems like an underutilized service.
Yes.
Dan's gonna get access to it.
Yeah.
Very much.
Send out alerts.
Very much.
Birthday party this weekend.
Somebody's cat's in my ear.
There you go.
All right, does anybody have any questions for Mike? Well, thank you very much for the information.
Thank you.
Can you send this over electronically
Yes,
as
I
well?
can.
All right,
Yeah.
great,
Will do.
appreciate it.
Do you want me to wait like a week?
Yeah,
just so I
send the
can have more
updated one.
final figures?
Yeah, send the updated one, because that's the one we'll give to Greg and get pushed into the final budget as we get into those conversations.
Okay,
All right?
all right. Thank
Cool.
you very much.
Great,
for
thank
your
you.
time.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
You could pay me to do their job.
Now, let's jump around for 1 second. Before we get into the special town meeting, why don't we just approve these minutes, or seek to approve the minutes, I should say, because we're kind of falling behind on that. So we have minutes, we're currently missing minutes from February 28th. Trying to see if maybe Jessica had some stuff that she can send us.
So I have the 28th minutes. The situation is that was like the first week that I did it, and I didn't really know that I was doing it, so I just happened to also be taking notes. So like I don't have anyone's name or like who did what or even who was here that day.
Mhm.
And it's not posted on YouTube.
In-
So I do have it, I could give it to you, but it's not really minutes, it's just like
Yeah, well,
paragraphs of information.
We'll have to do our best with that because it was not, whatever reason,
wasn't
there was
recorded, okay.
there's no recording from the 28th for YouTube, so we'll have to see. I think Jessica had some notes as well for that week, so we'll have to see if maybe we can combine all our forces for week 28, and we'll have to revisit that coming around, but we'll start off with the minutes from February 14th. And let's see if we have a motion on those minutes.
I make a motion to accept the meetings from 2/14/23.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the meetings from February 14th, 2023. All in favor?
Aye.
what you'll have to do, you can sign that copy because you're the clerk, because I gotta give it to Ellen.
Just sign it?
Yeah.
Okay, very fine.
And moving on to March 28th, the minutes from March 28th. Looking for a motion.
Make a motion that we accept the meetings from 3/28/23.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the minutes from March 28th, 2023. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I'll send that one too.
So what date are we missing? The two?
We're missing 2/28
Yeah,
because
February 28th.
3/11 was snowed out,
Yeah, right.
and we'll go on to that. So,
So that was the police department.
Yeah, the police department, what else is on that?
And the 25th
250th.
celebration.
yes.
Regional dispatch didn't come that day, Board of Assessors Office, 250th committee, and then we talked about the debt exclusion vote and the reorganization of our finance committee.
So when we get into
Okay, that's all there.
the vote, yeah, we're
Okay.
gonna.
I do have, yeah, now I have this part, which is fancy.
All right, so the select board last night, approved and signed the warrant for a special town meeting. Special town meeting will be on April 25th at 6:30 PM, Ruggles Lane. And there are 4 articles up for discussion, debate, and vote of favorable or unfavorable action by the Finance Committee. Right now, I have the Finance Committee also meeting a half an hour prior. I had a special town meeting. That's the day we're supposed to meet. I do not know what additional information we'll have. If we need to cancel that meeting ahead of special, we will. If not, we normally just roll the meeting through. I thought Greg was, our interim TA was gonna give me a call, and I don't know, maybe he had an appointment, so, with a conflict, so I haven't not yet heard from him. So we will move on for discussion of the articles of the special town meeting. So first up is Article 1, the 250th anniversary. The sponsor is the 250th committee, where they presented here to us. And this is written as, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, borrow, or transfer from any available funds a sum of money to cover expenses incurred by the 250th Celebration Committee.
And what kind of number do we get attached to that?
I spoke with Rich Stevens, the chair of that board, and they're gonna be seeking $100,000 on the floor of special for their
And that's
celebrations.
available through free cash?
There is available free cash. Free cash that's available is roughly $574.
Mhm.
And you can remember that's 2 years worth of free
Yeah,
cash.
yeah.
And we had the 250th, they presented to us with their plan. I'll do my best to recollect, and anyone can fill in the spaces, but, so their plan was to host a series of activities throughout the 250th year, which is calendar year 2024, which some of it will be in our fiscal 24, and some of it will cross over into the fiscal 25.
Can you remind me their plan, were they gonna over borrow in 24 and then carry it over to 25, or were they looking for more money in 25?
I believe, so their plan is to raise themselves approximately $40,000, and with hopes to have a total of $140,000 for all of their celebrations
In
between the
addition.
Founder's Day. They're not gonna be seeking another amount at this point in 25.
And they already have 25, so they gotta raise another 15.
Yeah, they have roughly between 20 and 25, yeah.
Yeah.
And they have been trying to get on,
Yeah.
they were trying to get on free cash last year, but the town didn't have free cash.
So we're looking for a vote, or?
We're looking for a motion to,
We have to provide a motion, whether the finance committee is favorable or unfavorable to fund the 100,000 from free cash towards the 250th anniversary committee's endeavors.
Do we have to give them
Remind me.
all of it?
Well, ultimately, this is a recommendation from the finance committee. The town, at special town meeting, will vote to approve and will ultimately approve the denomination.
Oh,
So what the finance committee is, we're offering a recommendation for town meeting. And our recommendation does not have to be unanimous. You can vote how you choose for the recommendation. It's just a lot of folks in town, because we go through the process of meeting with these departments, hearing from them, and that's why we're appointed to kind of be that fiscal watchdog, right? You know, in full transparency, obviously, the town is not in the best of fiscal situations. You know, we just had the debt exclusion passed by a narrow margin, if anyone pays attention, I think it was 5 votes. And so that does give some leeway into fiscal '24 for the regular operating budget with all the additional cost increase. But, you know, I don't want to sway anyone's opinion, but the 250th, I mean, they're a passionate group. They've been here asking for funds from the town for several years now in a row, and they kept getting pushed, and we're really, I've been on the finance committee for 3 years, and I think they've come all 3 years, and they have not been put, no money from the town has been appropriated towards
They
their
tried to
cause.
break it down.
Yeah.
Yes.
It didn't work out that way. so-
I
Because
feel
that-
bad
yeah.
because of COVID. Like, COVID hit them
Yeah,
first, and then
COVID.
the next year they were told, you know.
And then the town didn't have free cash last year, due to, so there was some clerical errors in paperwork. So basically, all of our free cash from fiscal '21 and fiscal '22 we received it certified all this year. So about $574,000, that's 2 years worth of free cash for the town.
Hypothetically, had they been asking for little chunks here and there, like this year might have been 20
Right.
grand.
so this has to last us 2 years.
Well, an article is sticky. So once a town approves an article, let's say they do approve at town meeting $100,000, that money will sit in that account. It has to be used specifically for those services, the 250th celebration causes, any costs associated to that. I know the police chief, he presented roughly, again, rough numbers, $7,000 to the town of added costs to cover, you know, details for parades and other pieces. My recommendation, as well as it was the prior town administrators, would be for those costs not come out of the operating budget, but come out of that $140,000 from their, part of their expenses, revenues, funds.
I remember Richard saying that they're already like sending out promises for money that they don't have the money, you know. So do we have like a total on what they've already promised to pay?
It's not significant. Yeah, well, he'd asked me if I wanted to have somebody come tonight, and I was like, well, you guys aren't on the agenda, and I wasn't gonna change things up.
Okay.
They just paid out some DJ services, so the select board manages their funds. So all their funds goes through the select board. So anytime they sign on a service, they bring it to the select board has to approve that service and then authorize it to be paid out. I believe to the date, they, don't hold me to this, but I think they had the Bummers, they paid a deposit, which is some parade group, and then they just recently paid out a deposit or a payment for DJ services for one of their pieces. So I believe overall it's been under $10,000 to this point paid out.
So the motion that has to be made is to give it a favorable or unfavorable, or just,
A favorable, yeah,
Yeah.
we want to give a favorable or unfavorable for the celebration. And this is not just a one parade, I believe they were looking to do, there's a Founder's Day, there's a few other things, I think the fair is kind of a fundraiser. The parade is a big thing, fireworks are involved at some point.
it was like 3 or 4 different, like,
Mhm.
big,
Yeah, I think their goal was in '24 was try to do an event
Every
once a month, yeah, throughout the entire 12
So I
months.
have written, yeah.
So, yeah, so all of those events will pull from the funds that they raise on their own, as well as the funds that the town appropriates.
Dan, remind me why we don't put the value, the amount of money, like, on this. on the
Because
warrant?
they don't technically need to have a value on the warrant. They can ask for, a sum of money, and then when they go to town floor, because town's the one that approves the funds, and then they can ask for the funds on the floor. And those funds can be changed on the floor. As you know from town meeting, somebody could,
So then our recommendation might change.
Yeah, that's, I know what you're thinking, yeah.
Are you saying to a higher amount or
Yeah,
less?
if it
So
changes, it's not written in
It's
the
not
warrant,
written, that's
so.
100,000, so you're saying could go up higher.
well, we could make a
Make a
favorable
motion.
recommendation to not exceed. That's what I would suggest, is,
I like
I'd be
that.
favorable to not exceed, given the circumstances. $100,000 is a big nut right now, right? But given the circumstances and the time frame, like, this is basically 2 fiscal years worth of funds. So they wanted 50,000 last year, they couldn't get it because there was no free cash. They want another 50,000 this year. So this is giving them both years in one shot from that free cash, or if it's
Yeah.
approved at the special town meeting. But my
I remember
recommendation,
them wanting more than that at our last meeting, but this, 100 is reasonable, I think.
it's steep, it's steep,
No,
for-
100 is reasonable. but
Yeah.
Some of the other numbers that were going around might be hard this year.
I think anything north of that is, you need to get some sponsorship, some donors. We are a smaller community, and right now, $100,000, there's a lot of folks, there's a lot of departments and a lot of needs within the community, so you want to be fiscally responsible as well. But there's something to be said about having a community celebration
Oh, it's
and
good.
coming together. That's part of living in a town like this, is to, celebrate at certain times and enjoy everyone's company, or not enjoy everyone's company.
I do have in my notes too that they were looking to put in an article for $100,000,
Yeah,
so I don't
that's
think
right.
that's, yeah. So that's all they asked for at the last meeting that we had.
Well, my suggestion is, for the finance committee to, make a favorable motion not to exceed an amount of
Yeah.
$100,000 from free cash specifically.
Yeah.
I don't think the town can take this from stabilization, and we certainly can't raise and appropriate from the operating budget.
I think that's a good idea.
Would I
And-
change it like that? Motion to accept, okay, so should I do this and, so I have a motion to accept favorable action to not exceed $100,000 on Article 1, 250th anniversary. That's by me. I
And-
motion that.
Well,
I have to write it in here, something.
Funding through free cash.
With funding through free cash.
Okay,
So we want free cash in there, we want 100K.
So and so at town meeting, that's what the recommendation from the finance committee would be.
So we're gonna vote?
Let's have-
I'll
was that-
second that.
Second.
okay,
Yeah.
so,
So we have a favorable motion and a second, all in favor.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so that's
So
7.
there's 7 of us, yeah?
Okay. Article 2.
I kept thinking this is muffin. I was like, what?
Yeah, I
Muffins.
keep thinking it
I'm
does.
hungry, apparently.
Mass Munifin Consultating Services. And this is to see if the town will vote to raise an appropriate borrow or transfer from any available funds a sum of money to pay for consultant services for the treasurer collector's office or take any action relative thereto. So this is when Alex left, there was an interim treasurer collector, this firm here, Sarah's firm. She came in at a specific cost, but that brought the overall cost of the town treasurer well above their operating budget that was approved at town meeting. I wanna say it's roughly $55,000 is the number that was presented to us. I don't have the exact figure in front of me. I probably could get it. But let's just call it roughly $55,000. And again, the free cash is where my suggestion would be to where to fund that Mass Munifin cost.
So this amount has already been spent,
This amount is spent,
okay?
and it's just,
What would it be?
what's that?
What would it be? What's the?
Well, it's hard to say because it comes out of the treasurer collector salary. It's not a separate line, right? So we're already overspent on that category. Again, I believe the number Jessica gave us at prior meeting was 55,000.
So it's
So, yeah, so on the general fund, it's gonna come out of the treasurer collector's salary. And, you know, so that fund's already overspent by roughly $22,000 as of April 6th, right? The end of the fiscal, that account's gonna be overspent by about $55,000 because of the Mass Munifin.
So did they just bring somebody in and then?
They brought somebody in the interim, because the town needs a treasurer to operate.
Yeah.
And then once Jake was hired, Mass Munifin services were no longer needed. It's a regular budgetary thing.
And they adjusted the salaries so they wouldn't reduce the turnover on those positions, right?
Not yet.
Yes.
I mean, we have some adjusted salaries that were presented to us for '24. I feel when Greg, maybe at our next meeting, it'll probably be in May at this point, when we go over the budget in detail. I think when we start looking, I don't want to get too far off track, but when we start looking at some of these other, that's one of the reasons that we need that debt exclusion, because we have wages coming in. DPWs and contract negotiations, the police unions and contract negotiations. It's also trying to understand this turnover that's occurring. Some of it is wage-based. Some of it, there's some other aspects as well. I did have the opportunity to meet with Greg, and, he's a well-seasoned town administrator. He's done it his whole life, and now he's retired. What he does is just an interim thing. And, he has some suggestions for the town in terms of, bylaws that need to be put in place, because right now, there's nothing that dictates the town administrator's job functionality. It's like, here you are, figure it out. So he has some suggestions. But in terms of the article, again, I would make a motion to approve the consultative services cost to be paid out of free cash. I don't want to put an exact number on it because I don't know the exact number, but I know it's roughly $55,000.
I'll second that.
So we have a second and a motion and a second to approve Article 2, special town meeting, as a favorable solution. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? 7-0.
Got it.
Article 3. So Article 3, for those of us that were at annual town meeting last year, this is a little bit of a redo. I will read Article 3 verbatim, just to have on record. So Article 3, capital request, purchase and equip a new ambulance. The sponsor is the fire department. 2/3 vote required. And this is to see if the town will vote to amend the vote taken under Article 17 of the June 14th, 2022 annual town meeting to authorize the town to raise and appropriate, borrow, or transfer the sum of $305,000 to purchase and equip a new ambulance, to authorize the town to raise and appropriate, borrow, or transfer an additional sum of money to purchase and equip said ambulance, to authorize the select board to enter into a lease purchase financing agreement in accordance with the provisions of General Laws Code 4421C for a period of up to 5 years for said purchase, and to use such appropriation of transfer of funds to fund such agreement, and if borrowing is used as the funding source for this purchase, to authorize the treasurer with the approval of the select board to borrow funds pursuant to general law, chapter 44-7, or any other enabling authority, and issue bonds and notes therefore provided. However, that any vote taken under said Article 17 as amended hereunder to authorize the treasurer to borrow for said purposes shall be subject to contingent upon an affirmative vote of the town and an election to exempt from limitations on taxes imposed by General Law Code 5921C, so-called Proposition 2.5, the town's allocable share of the amounts required for the payment of interest and principal on said borrowing, or take any other relative action thereto. So that's a boatload of
That's a
information.
lot.
So how does it vary from the?
So a few things vary, and what I've noted on this, the language of the vote last year, and Jessica brought this up at the last meeting, right?
Mhm.
The language was incorrect. It wasn't a legal language. So when the vote was approved, and then it's gonna go over up to like the Attorney General's office. And then the Attorney General, I believe, kicked it back and said, hey, this is an illegal vote per se, because it had to do with the lease agreement. My concern is the original vote on the lease agreement was 7 years. Now it's stating the lease agreement's 5 years. Okay, that's my one concern. The other option was to ask, let me just make sure, there's nothing else here, was to possibly, recommend a debt exclusion on the apparatus. Now, we've all listened to Chief Rogowski, well, most of us have listened to Chief Rogowski's meetings. We've had Deputy Scott Fisher and his counterpart, I forget his name, and they went through the budget. We know that the ambulance brings in receivables, and the overall ambulance budget was, it kind of it doesn't offset 100%, but I think the ambulance costs like $200,000, but they bring in like $300,000 or $400,000 in revenue. So I'm just trying to figure out here, 305 divided by 5. So we don't know what this interest rate in this lease agreement is, but now changing from 5 years to 7 years moves the yearly expense that would come out of the operating budget for a lease agreement to $61,000. When it was, and that's gonna be for 5 years.
Now, is your concern solely on, the additional strain on the budget? Because I think going from 7 to 5 addresses a lot of the concern that we had that we're borrowing, something for 7 years, it's only gonna last for 5 or 6.
No, that definitely, helps, like, that helps making sure you're not paying for equipment that is being put out of service. We also talked to the chief about trying to get the fire department on a similar program with their ambulances as the police department does with their cruisers, right? They replace the cruiser that's 6 years old every year.
Yeah.
And right now, an ambulance lasts about 6 years. So the goal for the ambulance department was to have an ambulance on the books to come in, a new one come into service every 3 years. And then still using it for its foreseeable life. Now, my thought is, I wouldn't wanna, like, the ambulance, I feel like the town can swing, because we gotta remember, they gotta put the order may already be in, because it was put, the agreement was began off of the vote last year, so this is just reaffirming that vote. Forecasting out, I feel the town could swing that $61,000 as part of the operating budget, especially if the rescue crew and the ambulance can reorganize their receivables to pull in and allocate money specifically for the ambulance. Because also, we gotta take into consideration, I think the ambulance will take 2 years to come in. Falling off, we will have the debt exclusion that just passed, so it's only gonna be on the books for another 3 full years, and then about another significantly reduced amount in the 4th year, as well as the common bands, I believe, are also coming off, and around the same time the town would take delivery of the ambulance. So I feel like at this point, knowing the numbers that we see, projecting out similar increases over the next few years in terms of expenses, that the town could afford to pay the ambulance out of the operating budget.
So you were calculating 61,000
Well, we were originally
for 5
calculating,
years, and what was it for 7?
it was 43,500 for the 7.
Did that figure go down? Wasn't it 350, or is that just me?
Yeah, I think it was 350 as well. I mean, it's probably a typo, and we're gonna have to vote again for,
Was the wording in here, if borrowing is used? The way I understood it was for a leasing agreement.
well,
And
borrowing,
now it sounds like it's opening it up to borrowing,
well,
which is a little different, then you're paying.
the town can't borrow. I
Is
mean, we
that
don't-
the same language we had in the original?
Pretty much, a lot of that's like legal jargon, right? The lease agreement that's seller finance leasing. So the ambulance company,
Yeah.
I believe, gives, if I recall my notes correctly,
And you don't pay till the ambulance is delivered.
you don't start paying until it's delivered.
And I feel like the interest on it was like significantly lower. That was like kind of the selling point on the lease
Mm-hmm.
agreement.
This is also exempting the monies from 2.5.
Well, it was written this way so you could vote,
Either way.
you could vote to debt exclude it, or you could vote to go on a lease agreement.
Well, let's vote this one first. The fourth one. Before we go to the third one.
No, we're already on the 3rd one now.
No, I mean at the meeting.
Oh, yeah.
At the meeting.
Is
No.
the,
I mean, the fire trucks, I mean, we can talk about the fire truck.
No, I don't mean
no,
that. I meant,
the 305,000, that's what we originally had in the warrant, original warrant?
I can look it up.
This is saying or authorize additional.
I have it. I have the warrant from last annual.
To appropriate, borrow, or transfer an additional sum of money. we're talking here about
So the ambulance was
305 plus.
365 in Article 17. So the rate did reduce by 60,000. So maybe, but the truck's the same. $305 divided by 5, yeah, that's not including any interest on the lease agreement, that's 61. It'd be, I mean, we could
Do you think that's
theorize
just a typo?
and say, you know, it'd probably be like another $4,000 in interest, right? So we could call it 65. The town did approve both apparatus at last annual town meeting. And I believe the fire truck was approved against the recommendation of the finance committee.
But it wasn't approved for under 2.5 or over exempt 2.5 exempt.
It was approved to come out of our operating budget with the town having no true way to pay
Right.
for it.
So is this,
The thing, I mean, well, let's finish up the ambulance before we move into the truck.
well, no, I'm on the.
Oh, you're on the ambulance. Yeah, so on the ambulance, the decision, you know, the determination for recommendation
Yeah.
really needs to be, you know, do we recommend, or are we favorable for the town entering into a 5-year lease agreement to purchase a ambulance? Or are we unfavorable to a purchase at all? Or are we favorable to a debt excluded purchase?
We already bought it though, right?
Yeah, no.
Well, you don't,
You gotta-
but you don't, until you take delivery, it's kinda like a house, right? Like, you don't, there might be a fee to
Yeah,
cancel the
yeah. order,
that the town can be on the hook for, but like, yeah, you don't really pay for it until you take delivery. Because if the town meeting doesn't approve it and says, no,
Yeah.
we don't wanna pay anything,
Yeah.
then the order gets canceled.
Oh, I mean,
I'm in favor.
we gotta be favorable, I mean, we've already passed it once, so
Yeah.
we've been favorable, we were favorable.
On the ambulance, we were
We were
favorable,
favorable, yeah.
on the ambulance.
So that's not a problem.
We didn't say anything on the truck, right?
The truck was, I believe it was unfavorable, 6-1 or 5-2. And that was coming out of the operating budget, the finance committee was unfavorable. There was not an option for debt exclusion that last year.
But can we do that this year?
The finance committee can really, we can recommend what we feel is the best for the fiscal well-being of the town, you know, that's why we're here. So my suggestion on Article 3 is to stick with what we had for our favorable action of the ambulance and have that be purchased at the 5-year lease agreement.
Yeah.
Under 2.5 or over 2.5?
Not debt excluded to come out
Not
of it.
debt excluded,
Not
okay.
okay. Not for, I mean, because the ambulance, if you're replacing the ambulance every 3
Yeah,
years,
I know.
if you start debt excluding ambulances, you're gonna end up like this
I
capital
know,
ban,
I know.
right? And then before you know it, you know, you're back in the same situation, because on the capital ban, for our new members, that, was just voted at the town election, that had equipment in there. Some of that equipment is now being put out of service, and the town is still paying for it for another 4 years. So the ambulance one, who is currently in operation, 6 years old, or it's about to be 6 years old, it's on its way out. This truck right here, the fire truck here, engine one, I believe, it doesn't have an engine number, one of the engines,
Mhm.
that's also as part of the capital ban. It was a used truck that the town bought 15 years ago, I forget the exact date, maybe 2016 or 2000, I forget the exact date. But that also is on its way of being put out of service, and the town still has 4 years put on it. So the debt exclusion vote was a way to pull those funds out of the operating budget for the next 4 years to basically bring that $174,000 into the operating budget to free it up for all these increased expenses we're seeing due to wages. I mean, that's just to maintain the services that the town is using. Like, we've met with these departments, no one's really increasing things above and beyond. Nothing wild that I see. You know, maybe you guys have a different opinion, but.
Yeah, go crazy.
But, all right, so to stay on track here, I would say, I'll make a motion to offer favorable action on Article 3 for the town to purchase the ambulance at $305,000, utilizing the 5-year lease agreement option.
Second that.
We have a motion and a second.
So you don't believe you have to mention anything about this subject to, upon the town voting to exclude it?
No, because we're
Doesn't that have
not,
to be
we're only making the
removed from the
recommendation.
language?
We're only making the recommendation, right? Town's gonna vote on it. The town could say, hey, you know what, we wanna debt exclude it. Now, if the town debt excludes it, that means it's gotta be, there's another ballot election, right?
Well, the article says it's gonna be subject to it.
Yeah, that's.
No, but
I think that should be eliminated from the language in here.
If we're not going for it, we should eliminate it, yeah, or the selectmen, whoever.
I would vote favorably on your,
Yeah.
Yeah, so
way
I,
you said it, but
I
it
think the
looks like-
motion and the second we have is favorable action at the sum of $305,000 for the 5-year lease agreement.
Okay.
With those
Yeah.
with the funds coming out of the town's operating budget.
Should I write all that?
And so we have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? 7-0.
At this point in the game, we can't modify the warrant, right?
We can't, no, we don't control or the finance committee, like, this is the town's vote, it's our recommendations, right? So we can make these recommendations of, hey, you know, because as we get into the fire truck, and the fire truck, I'm gonna say the language is the same as the ambulance on the Article 4. The only difference is the sum is now $700,000 versus the ambulance was at $305,000. Now, I said the same thing last year when we voted this on the annual. I don't feel that the town can afford to absorb the costs of both apparatuses at the same time into their operating budget. And like, so, if we take that 700,000 now, which didn't change, and we're not including any interest, and we divide that out by 5 years, that's now $140,000 coming out of the operating budget, right?
Plus the 60.
Plus the exactly, right, plus the 61,000. So the town's gonna be looking, when they take $200,000, I just don't.
get anything back from an ambulance that's gonna cover itself.
Last year, didn't he say he was going after a grant for a portion of that, but then got the money and spent it somewhere else?
He did get a grant, the fire chief did get a grant. They got a tanker truck. So that they got I wanna say it's like a $500,000, $600,000 tanker truck.
Yep.
And the select board, the town had to come up with 10%, and I believe they used ARPA funds to pay the 10%.
But wasn't that grant being applied for this particular truck?
He had one, but I don't believe this one was approved.
Didn't meet the criteria.
Yeah, so the criteria changed, and he ended up just getting a whole different truck, a tanker truck. You know, it's unfortunate because the chief is, you know, deployed, and he wasn't able to really give us an in-depth presentation on, I'm sure, I don't want to speak for him, but I'm sure he's gonna say, you know, a tanker is different than an engine,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I don't know a ton about fire trucks, but I mean, I feel like I know the difference between a tanker and an engine, and We know the chief was very well versed and gave us a lot of information on those. He would also, I would say, because since it's back up for a vote, you know, they still want the equipment.
And this was the one that the cost was so high based on the fact that, wasn't it that
Or
it had to
custom
be like a
building,
custom,
yeah.
because the building was a certain width and length and what have you, so there, it
For
had to
3
be
million,
a.
we could have built a new building and a regular
Right,
truck.
right.
think
I
it's
feel like
17
that was
17
true,
million
right?
for the-
Yeah,
for the
like
truck.
there was
17
like,
Well, I think this one stays down in South Barre.
oh, so maybe the tanker went to that.
Yeah, well, you are
One of them
correct.
was like a
Anything that
weird
goes up
size or
over
something.
here,
Yeah.
uptown, those vehicles, if they're oversized, they actually have to customize them to get to fit into the garage over there, because it's an old, small building. It's probably, I mean, one of the smallest fire stations that if you drive around to all the other towns, they have these big
Yeah.
booming garages with roofs and stuff. So the difference here is, there wasn't the option to debt exclude.
But now there is.
Now, well, we could also just make the recommendation to debt exclude. So I've learned a lot about debt exclusions, right? I'm still kind of new in this whole thing. So I decided to, you know, spend some time at like 1 a.m, like let me study up my debt exclusion knowledge.
What's the math on this per taxpayer, per like average, what did they say, $300,000 home or something? What did she say the average home was?
The median price of a home in Barre is $300,000. That's the median value, I should say. So here's the deal: if you debt exclude,
Yeah.
that's a outright purchase. It's not a lease purchase.
Yeah.
So the town saves on some money on interest, or there's probably interest in there somewhere, anyways. I don't know what the terminology would be on the note, how long the note would be. It would be a ban. I believe a ban is a 10-year note. But an apparatus like a fire truck does last 30 years. Right, so it's not like an ambulance or a cruiser that's gonna be out of service in a couple of years. My recommendation would, you know, for the town, if they would approve this, that it needs to be, at this point, a debt excluded purchase. You know, that's the only way the town will be able to afford this, right, and still maintain other services, as well as adapting to increased costs, and who knows how long these increased costs are gonna occur for.
What was the last amount that we debt excluded, and how much did it raise us, like $80 a year on taxes?
So it was $85 per
350.
calendar or fiscal year. It was, I have it.
Like 500 and something, I think.
Yeah, it was roughly $500,000. So if we use that as that's a good base. So that
Yeah,
is,
so you'd be somewhere close to the.
It'd be like $100 per.
it's capital ban.
On
This
top
is-
of what we just voted to debt
Yeah.
exclude. And we didn't vote this favorable last time, right?
This was not favorable by the finance committee.
So this gets added onto like homeowners taxes or something?
Yeah.
Yes, so debt exclusion, what you're doing is you're not paying for it out of the operating budget, out of the general levy limit. You're saying, okay, the town's gonna pay for this, but we're gonna add like a surcharge, an additional tax. So with the debt exclusion that just passed, I don't have the exact numbers, but I do know that it's 174 for at least 4 more years. So that's including the interest, so that's roughly $696,000. So basically, this truck would cost, if you did it for 4 years, it would cost $85 a year. If it was a 10-year note, you know, you're talking 700,000, talking 70,000. You do the quick math.
So people wouldn't know it was like
It would be like $12. Don't hold me to this number, but it'd probably be like $12 and $15 per year for the average home valued $300,000.
Median.
410. Yeah, median home value.
median home.
Median home value for That's again, that's using a 10-year. I don't know if that's the length of the note, but I believe most of the bands, what's that, bond anticipated note?
Yep.
Would the acting have this information? Or,
Yeah. Oh, if it's debt excluded, then what would happen if it's approved at town meeting to be debt excluded, the town would have to then hold another special election, which does add to the cost, because as Ellen presented, a ballot election for the town costs of roughly $10,000. And so there would have to be a special election set up at the ballot box. And so what happened with the recent debt exclusion, those funds were already approved at a town meeting, right, those capital purchases. All they did was change the funding source from the operating budget, so that's why that only required a simple majority at the ballot box. If this vote passes at town meeting, 2/3 required, to be debt excluded, then a special election will be held in the town, and there would be a simple majority at the ballot box. And that's the full process, from my full understanding of talking to town administrator, the select board, and doing my own research.
But the way this says, it's not to be debt excluded, it's just to be borrowed?
No, you can, that's the.
Or like all
that's the
those
cer-
extra fancy words mean it could be just debt excluded?
It can go either way.
Okay.
It can go either way.
We're just saying, yes, buy it. We'll figure out how we'll pay for it later.
if the last one
If you
passed
do
by.
if you do the lease agreement, the funds would have to figure out how to come out of the operating budget, or there would have to be another separate vote later on to either debt exclude, use free cash, or use other means, which we don't know what those other means could be, right? In my opinion.
The $110,000 a year we just saved from debt excluding, putting it back into the budget, is gonna get spent on this truck.
Pretty much. And then, but the common ban comes off, I wanna say in 26 or 25 or 26. So that's another savings, off of that. So what's gonna happen, basically, if this was approved as a debt exclusion, when this goes on the books, then it's gonna be roughly the same. You might have 1 year where you're paying for the common and you're paying for the truck. And then the common's gonna fall off. And then the next year, you're gonna have, the debt exclusion that was just voted on the capital combined ban, that's gonna fall off. And then I wanna say in 27 or 29, I forget the year, Ruggles roof is gonna come off. So those are the notes that are out there, that are debt excluded notes at this point. By, I wanna say 29, I'm confident with that number, all current debt excluded notes will come off the books.
Then we could spend more.
With the taxpayers and well, really not even taxpayers, if the voters choose.
Yeah.
Right, and it was an overwhelming approval last year, and this year's been a bit eye-opening, right? Like, we've had the departments come in and present to us budgets higher. We still don't know the school's official number.
Mhm.
We have them in the budget at a 5% increase.
There's still,
And,
no way to know.
yeah, we don't, so again, my recommendation on the truck would be only favorable if it's funded through debt exclusion.
I make a motion to approve that.
Close, Stefka. So you can say.
I'm so close.
If you wanna, make a motion to, I think.
Accept favorably,
Yes.
Yeah, favorable action.
favorable action on Article 4, capital request, to purchase and equip a new fire truck through
Debt exclusion.
debt exclusion, or by debt exclusion, yeah.
I would like to do that. I'm like,
Debt exclusion,
So we have a motion
okay.
that you guys heard, ladies heard.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, for favorable action of a $700,000 fire apparatus truck. to be recommended favorably, if I did not already say that, with the caveat that it is a debt excluded purchase. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? 7-0.
Wish the chief was here to
Yeah.
explain a
us the
little bit better.
difference.
Yeah, make us smile when he tells.
Well, that was, I'm surprised what was not on here, and I'm not gonna talk, well, Jessica wanted that 23, the fiscal 23 ban number to come out of free cash as well. And maybe we were just gonna hold off to annual town meeting for that. I was surprised that wasn't on this article. So, that's that, I believe. In terms of budgets, fiscal 23, as is gonna be very close, the bottom line. We got snow and ice, that'll be part of annual town meeting. That's over. We have departments that are over. Overtime budgets, highway department, overtime budgets, police department. Cost of fuel, oil, heating oil, diesel oil, all the oils are up, supplies are up. So I was surprised, so we'll have to see what the town administrator's recommendation, select board recommendation is going into annual town meeting, which will be coming up in June.
Did Jessica, before she left, provide a budget or?
Yeah, we had the last budget we have is the one we had at our last meeting. The only thing that was missing from that budget was the official school number, the town clerk, Ellen's numbers were not in that budget. And the
I don't think-
DPW was.
I don't think I ever got an Excel version, an Excel sheet of that budget. Did we get a?
I have a
Excel
PDF,
version of that?
I think I have an Excel. You're talking about, let me see here, do I have it?
Well, her last day, she was looking at, she was projecting, costs into the future. And she had
You're talking about this right here, right? I'll find it, I know it's in here. This, the small print,
yeah, there's a new one of those?
there's not a new one of these, because, so this is
There was
the.
an old one, I had an old one.
This is the most updated, I'll send you, I thought I sent it, but I'll send you the PDF version I have of this. But it doesn't have our last meeting in there, because Greg hasn't put those numbers over. He's only, when I met with him on Monday briefly, and I wanna say it was his third day on the job.
Yeah.
So, I went over, what our needs are of being, putting these numbers in for the town clerk.
So we would expect an Excel version of that to be ready soon.
Yeah, Excel, PDF, what do you want? You want it in Excel? Do you like
Yeah,
Excel?
yeah.
Okay. I will request it in an Excel, because I also asked for, Sandy's getting some information too. So then we also have the revenue, right? We discussed revenue at last meeting as well. Which I believe the indirect water and sewer costs, that has been discussed. I asked Greg about that, that was discussed with the Sewer and Water Commission, to let them know. Because that offsets their contribution for
Yeah.
healthcare, all that other stuff for.
Well,
for the
Jessica didn't
employees.
have her recommendation in there.
She has the
I
TA.
didn't think.
No, she has, there's a
Yeah, that-
column, yeah, she's got, it's very small print, right? But the FY 24, the FY 23 budget, then there's the FY 24 requests, her recommendation, and then there's her recommendation with the COLA. And I believe her recommendation was not far off of what the town's requested.
Yeah,
I think the library had a few things, like she pushed back on some of their step increases. But also, I mean, we're gonna have Greg run through the numbers as well, and see what his recommendation is. Cause I also asked, like, it would be nice if the finance, cause remember, the finance committee had to, give up the reserve funds out of the budget with the last minute adjustments at annual town meeting to accommodate the schools. So it would be nice if we could bring that back in, because that does provide that little bit of cushion. So you have somebody like Mass Munifin or some of these pieces that come in, and you don't have to worry about free cash. You can offset those expenses with the reserve funds. Even if it's not used, it's in the budget. So not having that, we did use that one year for the police department.
Police for that extra
Yeah.
job, yeah.
So it is a good tool for the finance committee to have, to help maintain a balanced budget without the need of going to a special town meeting. Of course, I mean, we didn't have a significant amount. I was looking at Hubbardston's budget, because I was trying to compare our town to a similar town, and they have 30,000 in their reserves for their finance committee. They also pay their town administrator 105,000, and Barre pays theirs 82,000. So, and their operating budget's 10 million versus 13 million, so.
Yeah, they have no water and sewer.
So, I mean, that's another thing, is that it's probably, the town's probably gonna have to increase, if they wanna try to, my opinion is if they wanna try getting somebody to be a more permanent town administrator, they're probably gonna increase that line, you know, so it's not, it's more than just, you know, an entry-level position that you're always gonna see that turnover. You know, I think, you folks been around longer than me in the town politics. I mean, how many town administrators have you worked with?
a lot.
Yeah,
Too many to remember.
yeah.
What, do you know, did you speak with Jessica about her, is this sustainable if we accept all the high numbers coming in for yearly increases from the various departments?
You know,
You think
Well,
it's sustainable for,
I think
we
wages,
can maybe get by this year, but.
it depends on how the costs go for things out of the town's control. Right, what's really out of the town's control at this point? The schools, as much as you could argue with the cost of the schools, it really comes down to state aid, right? The town's kind of handcuffed in a way of what, there's some leeway, we're talking a small percentage of how much pushback you can give against the school. Because what's gonna happen is if you don't approve it,
the state.
it's gonna go back to the state, and the state's gonna force the number anyways, and you just spent all that energy. You really spent a lot of energy, time, you're gonna end up with the same result. That's the fact when it comes to that. Now, the police department, with all the police reforms, right? You have no part-time officers, that's being eliminated, so now you're forced full-time. You go to full-time, well, that had added expense, you got healthcare, you got retirement benefits, you got all these other pieces that come with that position of being full-time.
I think they can be part-time officers, I think they just have to go through the full academy. In the past, most of the part-timers went through like the part-time academy,
Yeah.
so like, but I think you could work in the part-time capacity if you do the bridge academy, but I think the window to go to the bridge like is passed. So they would
There's
have
one,
to
I
go
think,
to,
yeah, there's
like-
1 year left, and that was part of the chief's budget as well, but they feel that number, that 8,000, is gonna be offset with a grant from the state. But they have to go through that bridge academy
Yeah.
before the grant expires. So there's that, I mean, there's a lot, so we're gonna kinda miss out because the special town meeting's interfering a bit with our meeting. So I don't know what the committee wants to do. We could meet, there's only 4 articles on special. My experience is special, it just depends, is there a quorum when we start? If there's a quorum when we start, it's probably not gonna be a very long meeting. We could right now I have a meeting a half an hour prior to. That's probably not a lot of time to discuss budgets, do anything other than focus on the special. We could just push it and experience a longer meeting on May 9th to have a full budget discussion. Because we have May 9th, and then our public hearing is scheduled for the 23rd of May. And then we jump into June 13th for annual town meeting. So I mean, that's really, we have like 4 meetings between, we don't have a lot of time to truly, you know, dive. I would like to vote on each of the departments, you know, recommendation votes, whether the finance committee approves or favorable or unfavorable for each of the department budgets. Run through that with Greg. We could do that on the 9th. Do we want to try to meet after a special town meeting? We might have to come back here, because I'm sure they're gonna wanna close Ruggles up after the meeting's over.
What time is it?
6:30,
The custodians won't get us out.
or, I mean, we could do a meeting ahead of time. I could see if we could do 5:30 to 6:30. I don't know if we'll need a full hour. If we don't need an hour, we can close our meeting and go into special and be up there. I wasn't sure what everyone else's schedule is.
I'm actually here, that's hitting my, I've been living in Long Island. I gotta go back Thursday. Yeah, I mean, I can eat oysters until my heart's content, so that's a good thing, but I'm kinda getting old. So, but I'll be here for both of the next 2 meetings.
Okay.
So, or I'll just go down Wednesday morning versus Tuesday.
Okay.
So,
So, I mean, I feel like we would have some sort of content to discuss, other than special. If we wanted to, you know, if we were able to accommodate, if we want to meet earlier, 5:30 to 6:30, and then go right into special town meeting. And that would hopefully save us from meeting extra long. Because I also have a thought on like the public hearing. I know that it's not usually well attended, but, you know, the things I've learned over the years, I want to provide more, try to do a little bit more interactive with if anyone shows up. You know, and maybe Greg can also, you know, help walk through the process of town meeting, because I feel like that's also a big holdup of folks that show up at town meeting, they don't really know the process.
and that's at the senior center?
Yeah, well, we're 95% certain it'll be at the senior center. I don't see anything. What I've done also is I got access to my town government. I think I sent it to you in an email. So I've started putting the meetings in ahead of time, because that's something I asked prior, but it never really happened. So I like to be transparent as possible. So I wanted to put it out there so it's not last minute before the meeting scheduled. But I didn't realize once you post a meeting, you make one little change, it reposts it. So now I'm going in there, I'm like, oh, I've spelled that wrong. Sorry for the 55 notifications, whoever signed up for them. But that, you know, that's kind of like what I've been doing recently, because it's been a change for me with Jessica. I didn't realize how much she's actually, she really did a lot.
Like above and beyond our role?
Yeah,
Like,
probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
Like the IT stuff, getting us on Zoom for.
Yeah, doing the Zoom thing and, you know, just doing, like, I've coordinated with Sandy and all this packet stuff, and if anybody wants any extra documents, I just think there's a few more extra copies. But I just want to make sure I was prepared for everyone, because I know the emails, our goal last year, right, was to get the packet like on Thursday or Friday, so we have the time over the weekend, and it's been really, that hasn't been happening. So, and I'm not sure, we're kind of past the department point. We'll have to meet with the schools again. That'll likely be on May 9th as well. Fingers crossed it's on May 9th. We may have to hold a special meeting just to meet with Quabbin on that. But that's just kind of forecasting out for some of, you know, Steph Guerra and Irina, new members and stuff. And then once we get to annual town meeting, right, it kind of slows down. I think we have to meet once maybe in August or September to sign some stuff. The omnibus whatever we signed kind of late, sign that, and then we're kind of taking a little bit of a hiatus, meet again in October and ramp things up again.
What are the hours that Greg is here?
Right now, he's here Mondays and Tuesdays in person, and he's available, I think, on the phone on Thursdays.
Where'd he come out of?
Dudley or Douglas, somewhere down, yeah, Blackstone, he talked about Blackstone, I think, too. But I think I believe that was like his career, that's what he did.
Yeah,
at
yeah,
the time.
I think if he's out of Blackstone, I think I know who he is.
Very knowledgeable, he had a lot of information. I was hoping he told me he was gonna call in, I don't know what happened with him, but he didn't call in, so, can't control that. All right, I'm done
You're done?
talking. I could keep going, Brian, you want me to keep going? I mean, it's quite warm in here, I mean, I see where the heating oil's going, because it's steaming.
I have this booth though, so, sorry.
Do we have to make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Yes, we do,
I
yes.
make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I second that.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone.